Hey, what's up? Let's say hypothetically, you are enrolled in a history class in high school, college, not so much because you want to be, but because you're forced to be by some requirement. Or maybe you've got like one of those relatives who's a history buff and just, goes on and on and on about stuff from the past and just bores everybody to tears. And you wonder, like, all right, why should I care about any of this? How could this possibly be relevant to my life? All of this stuff that happened so long before I was born. In other words, you may be wondering, is history BS? That's what we're here to talk about, so let's discuss it. I'm Dr. Doug Campbell, and I'm doing a series called No BS History, which is going to be a set of videos dealing with various interesting things from the past, kind of asking the question, like, is this given issue, is this BS? And I figured it made sense to start off with the very first in the series being a video asking the question, is history itself BS? Now, I've been teaching history at the college level for more than 20 years now. So obviously, like, I'm not going to answer that question by saying, yeah, studying history is a total waste of time. My life is a lie. Like, I'm not going to do that. But obviously, not everybody is a professional historian with that set of interests. That said, like, I think I can give you 3 solid reasons.
Then shalt thou count to 3, no more, no less. 3 shall be the number thou shalt count, and the number of the counting shall be 3. 4 shalt thou not count, neither count thou 2, excepting that thou then proceed to 3. 5 is right out.
3 solid reasons why I think everybody should care at least a little bit about the past. Now, to start off with, maybe one reason that you usually hear about why you should study history, which actually is BS, which is the famous quotation by George Santayana that those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Obviously, like, in a literal sense, that's totally not true. If it were, we could be like, well, World War II, that was kind of a bummer. We better not let that happen again. So what do? Well, we search for the little German guy with like the creepy mustache who likes to yell a lot, and problem solved. We won't repeat that mistake. Now, clearly, that's not what Santayana really meant. He was talking about repeating patterns in the past and being familiar with those to avoid problems in the future, that sort of thing. But still, it has become something of a cliche. Like, it always comes up in any sort of conversation about, like, okay, why should you study history? And cliches are a substitute for thinking. Clearly, I'm not interested in you avoiding thinking about these issues. Thinking is the name of the game. So that said, what are my non-BS reasons why everybody should know a little bit about history? As I said, I got 3 of them. First of all, studying history can make you a better human being. Like, that may sound a little bit corny and like super idealistic, but I really do believe it to be true, like on a basic level. If you think about basic questions, like, what does it mean to live a good life? How can I live the best life that I possibly can? What sorts of decisions should I make? How should I treat other people? Should I try to change my society? Or should I try to preserve my society and prevent it from changing? Like, those sorts of basic questions about, like, how do I human? And how do I do that successfully?
My good man.
I don't know.
Neither do I.
Those are things that I think that we all care about. And to answer those questions, obviously you could approach it like a video game. How do you get good at a game? Well, you practice it and you play it over and over and over again, and you make mistakes, and perhaps you die over and over and over again. But when you die, you can just go back to the point where you left off, try it again, avoid those mistakes. Like, clearly, that's not really going to work in real life. As far as we know, we only have one shot at this. So if the way you're going to learn that I shouldn't step in front of a moving bus is by doing it,
you can take that fake apology and shove it right up your hairy...
well, then you're kind of screwed. Studying history allows you to see how other people have answered those questions in the past. And also to evaluate, like, okay, well, how did their lives work out for them? The way they structured all of that stuff, the choices that they made, the values that they held, was that successful? Did it turn out horribly for them? Or did it reap substantial rewards? And by studying that, obviously, you can come up with sets of principles to sort of copy in your own life and to try and nudge your society in that sort of direction. And, in much the same way that, like, traveling is a good and interesting thing because it broadens your horizons. It helps you to realize that, like, the way I live is not the only way to do things. And there's a whole wide world out there with people who live entirely differently. That can enrich your own perspective. Studying history more or less does exactly the same thing by introducing you to people in the past. So, yeah, history can make you a better human being if you study it. Now, second reason has to do not so much with, like, the content of history, like learning the individual facts and stories from the past, but rather history as a methodology, which, if you're studying history systematically, like, that's always going to be part of it. That there are a set of critical methods that we use as historians to learn about the past and to kind of ask the question, like, how do we know anything about the past? And taking a look at actual evidence and kind of evaluating it. How trustworthy is this piece of evidence? What does it tell us about the perspective of the person who produced this piece of evidence, who wrote it or recorded it or whatever? What does it tell us about the values of the society in which that person lived? In considering all of this evidence, how can I use it to portray the past in an accurate manner without going beyond what the evidence should reasonably allow me to say, or distorting the evidence in some way? Like, that critical methodology. Not only is that not BS, but those methods are precisely how you would discover whether or not anything is BS. Those methods are part and parcel of the study of history. They are super useful for determining what is true and what is false in the present, in the past, wherever. So that's the second reason. And the final thing I would say is that you should study history because it's interesting. Now you may say, come on, I have taken classes on history before. It's not interesting. In fact, it's super boring. I would say, like, maybe you've taken the wrong class then. I mean, if you think about history broadly construed, it includes all of the human experience in the past. Kind of the stereotype is history is a list of names and dates, and it's an endless parade of long dead generals and kings and emperors and presidents. That's only a very, very tiny sliver of what history has the potential to be about. It can include anything from the human past. So we're not just talking about kings and presidents, but we are talking about athletes, talking about prostitutes, we're talking about artists, we're talking about scientists. It includes not just war and government and religion, but it includes poetry, It includes technology. It includes sex. It includes violence. It includes all of the sorts of stuff that makes life worth living. Cuisine, fashion, everyday life, really. And if you can't find something within all of that, that broad, massive scope of the human experience to interest you, maybe it's not history that's boring. Maybe it's you.
You basic.
Maybe you're the one that's boring. I mean, there should be something to interest you. Now, obviously, you could potentially run into the issue of it's not so much the subject matter that is boring, but the history class you're taking is boring because of the instructor. There is no subject, no matter how fascinating, that the wrong teacher cannot totally kill.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? A tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone, raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
By leaching all of the interesting stuff out of that. And for that, I mean, really, your only option there is to find a different teacher to study it with, or to study on your own, which is always a possibility. But there should be something about humanity's experience in the past for every person to find interesting. If you've got a class that you honestly just are totally bored by day after day, class session after class session, by all means, find a different class. But at any rate, that's, I think, the best case I can make for why history is not BS, for why you should study history. Only you can determine whether you found those reasons justification enough. But I would argue that history is indeed valuable. It is something that it can make you a better human being. The methodology of history can help you separate fact and truth from BS. And it should, on a certain level, be intrinsically interesting as well. So I encourage you all to study history with wild abandon, to enter into it in a giddy manner, and to suck all of the marrow out of the bones of the human past that you possibly can. If you like this video, feel free to share it, like, subscribe, all of that jazz. I'll see you next time.